The next scene shifts to Omnia Medical Examination Center. Inside, we see Gisu with his injuries finally patched up. He's getting an earful from his father, who's clearly disappointed in him. His dad doesn't hold back, making it clear that Gisu deserves every one of those injuries because, as he puts it, if you're going to play stupid games, you're going to win stupid prizes. The arrogant mother starts yelling at her husband, clearly outraged. She reminds him that their son is in the hospital, and this is all he has to say? She tells him to go find the brute who did this and yell at him instead. She also points out that the same brute busted Huijin's arm too. Honestly, it's a real mess. Huijin is a bitch to the point that she even pinned the blame of her own mishap on our boy. We all know that she tripped and banged up her shoulder, but instead of taking responsibility, she's blaming him for everything. The angry father finally calms down and lets out a deep sigh. The concerned mother tells her son to just focus on resting and recovering. As they start to leave, the mother grumbles about making the kid who hurt their son pay if she ever gets her hands on him. Once they're gone, Gisu finally asks his sister why she had to tell their parents everything. He explains that by doing so, she's just made things worse for him. He feels humiliated that people will think he ran to their parents like a whining brat after getting beaten up. His sister then asks how she was supposed to hide the fact that her brother was in the hospital and that her arm was broken. Gisu gets pretty ticked off and demands to know if Jin was the one who did this to her arm. She remembers how she tripped and fell, but she doesn't mention that to him. Instead, she just says that Jin was responsible. It's messed up how she's shifting the blame so shamelessly. She then quickly stands up and tells him to just stay here and get better. She says she'll make sure they realize once and for all who they're dealing with. Gisu sits there, unsure if they should mess with our boy again. Meanwhile, we're back with their parents. The woman reveals that she's just spoken to Mr. Cha, but her husband asks why she's complicating things and tells her to let the school handle it. The woman responds that it's Saturday already, and she doesn't want to sit back and twiddle her thumbs waiting for them. She starts yelling, pointing out that the school won't deliver real justice for what was done to their kids, and they'll likely only settle for a suspension or expulsion at best. The husband continues to argue, saying she has no business going to Mr. Cha to handle this personally. The woman reveals that she already knows Mr. Cha and that he's been handling his dirty work for years. Meanwhile, Huijin is eavesdropping and feeling pretty smug about her mother contacting Mr. Cha. She knows that Mr. Cha is the scary gangster who works for her father, and she's sure this will put an end to those troublemakers once and for all. The scene shifts to a rundown place where a man is fidgeting with his lighter, clearly on edge. Two goons walk by, looking pretty disappointed. They grumble about being ordered by their boss to handle some teenage drama, and none of them are thrilled about it. Even the boss himself isn't thrilled about dealing with this kid's squabble. But hey, a job's a job, even if it means wading through a mess of teenage nonsense. The scene flashes back to a time where a luxury Mercedes is zooming down the road. Inside the car, Mr. Cha, the mafia boss, takes a call from the woman. She fills him in on how her daughter's hand got fractured, and her son got beaten up by some teenager. She's insisting that he needs to handle it. Cutting back to the present, Mr. Cha is puffing out smoke from his cigarette, clearly fuming. He's beyond frustrated that he has to deal with this kind of nonsense as well. The scene transitions back to the quarters, where our boy is sitting before his computer, still lost in thought about his encounter with the Gisu. He's wondering if these guys are really going to let it go. Suddenly, the doorbell rings. He hears his grandpa arguing with someone at the door. It turns out that the people at their doorstep want to see Jin. The intimidating man outside claims they just want to talk to Jin for a bit. Grandpa, concerned about the late hour, questions what could be so urgent. Our boy steps out of his room, telling his grandpa that he'll be back soon after he hears what they want. Despite Grandpa's reluctance and even his sister's protests, Jin flashes a pleasant smile. He reassures them that he knows these guys and that it's just a quick chat, nothing to worry about. With that, our boy leaves his concerned grandpa behind. The goons take him to an abandoned construction site, and he wonders who they might be taking him to meet. When they finally arrive, the lackeys report to their boss that they've brought the guy in question. The boss remains silent, puffing on his cigarette. The bald lackey reveals that the kid caught on quickly, didn't make a fuss, and just came along. The boss, a bit surprised and pleased, decides to make it quick. He snaps his fingers, and the lackeys immediately grab their iron bats. One lackey tells his friend to hold our boy's arm, as he'll be the one to dish out the beating. Meanwhile, the boss sighs and decides to text the mother, letting her know that he's taken care of the job. While the boss scrolls through his phone looking for that mother's number, the lackeys ask him why our boy had to mess with the kids of Kim family. As soon as our boy hears the mention of kids, he realizes this must be about Gisu Kim. The boss, feeling frustrated and annoyed, pauses his scrolling, deciding he shouldn't call her while our boy is present. However, he looks over at our boy and is intrigued by how unfazed and emotionless he appears. Just as the lackeys charge at him, Jin suddenly uses his ninja-like speed. He grabs the bald lackey's hand before he can swing at him and pushes the man toward him, delivering a brutal shoulder smash right to the lackey's face. The boss watches this with his wide-eyed eyes, as he witnesses this flawless execution of the move. Meanwhile, the other lackey, bat in hand, swings at our boy. He ducks, letting the bat swoosh harmlessly over his head. But the lackey tries another swing, but our boy charges at the bat as if it's no big deal, leaving the mafia boss utterly bewildered. With lightning speed, our boy locks the baseball bat in his arm and delivers a brutal punch right under the lackey's chin. Not stopping there, he follows up with a devastating blow to the lackey's chest. Then, with a fierce grip, he grabs the lackey by the neck and throws him down onto the bricks below. The boss watches in shock, clearly impressed and flabbergasted by the sheer skill and audacity of our boy's moves. The bald lackey grabs our boy from behind, threatening him with death. But our boy quickly jabs his shoulder into the lackey's ribs, and then delivers a solid shoulder smash to his face, sending him crashing to the ground. Mr. Cha realizes that this kid is no average teenager, because his combat skills are exceptional. He finally decides to step in himself. As he strolls forward, he scratches his head, snickering and commenting that he never thought he'd be fighting teenagers at his age. Meanwhile, our boy can tell that even though this man is a mafia boss, he still is a weak sauce, because my guy can clearly spot all of the weak spots of this man. As the boss swings a powerful fist at him, Jin effortlessly sidesteps it. The boss then starts a barrage of punches, but our boy dodges each one with ease, making it look like a walk in the park. As they continue their back and forth, our boy quickly sidesteps, but another punch comes straight at him. He blocks the hit, though the heavy force makes him skid backward. The mafia boss sneers, impressed that he managed to block that one as well. Meanwhile, Jin checks his wrist where he took the punch and his hand winces from the aching pain. He realizes that the mafia boss predicted his movements and delivered the punch with precision. On the other hand, the mafia boss's curiosity has finally peaked, and he asks Jin who he really is. Jin casually replies that he's just a high school student. The boss isn't buying it. In his mind, he figures this kid must have some serious skill and experience to fight like this. Jin takes his stance. With a grin, the boss says he's up for sparring further, and balls up his fist to deliver a blow to our boy. Our boy quickly deflects an incoming punch and tries to throw one of his own, but the mafia boss sidesteps it effortlessly. The boss then attempts to attack, but our boy grabs his hand and swings a punch towards his gut. The mafia boss reacts again, causing our boy to end up landing a hit right to his face instead. Mr. Cha is absolutely annoyed after taking that hit right over his face and tries to swing another punch at our boy. Once again, our boy deflects the attack and, locking eyes with his opponent, delivers a brutal blow to his face. He follows this up with a series of powerful punches, knocking Mr. Cha to the ground, leaving him feeling utterly humiliated by a teenager. It's surprising to see a mafia boss who relies more on his fists than on guns. Anyway, once Mr. Cha is defeated, he grins, noticing that our boy doesn't seem rattled at all by the fight. He doesn't know where this kid came from, but he's sure that the Kim family definitely messed with the wrong person. The scene transitions to this agency, known as National Assembly member In-bai Kim. Inside the building, 2 guards are stationed outside an office. Inside the office, we see Mrs. Kim and Mr. Kim. The woman asks her husband why Mr. Cha hasn't responded yet. She is growing impatient with every passing second, tells him to call Mr. Cha. Mr. Kim responds that she should just wait, as Mr. Cha will call back once he is done dealing with our boy. On the other hand, we also see their daughter, who lets out a sigh, and just then, the telephone begins to beep. The impatient lady quickly tells her husband to put the call on speaker so she can hear the news herself. Mr. Kim begins by apologizing to Mr. Cha, saying he's sorry for the ridiculous favor his wife asked him to fulfill. But the women, however, continue to argue loudly, insisting that their kids were attacked, so she doesn't understand how it can be called ridiculous. To everyone's surprise, Mr. Cha says that he's the one who should apologize. Mr. Kim asks for an explanation, and Mr. Cha reveals that it seems their children have meddled with the wrong person, because Cha himself also had been defeated by our boy. This news rattles Mr. Kim to the core. As far as he knows, Mr. Cha is the best enforcer in the business, and it's unfathomable that he lost to a high school kid. Just then, the office door starts rattling as someone tries to force it open. Both Mr. and Mrs. Kim look anxiously at the door. When it finally creaks open, they see soldiers sprawled on the ground, leaving the husband and wife utterly anxious and alarmed. Even their bratty daughter jumps out of her seat when they see Jin strolling into the room. The door behind him slams shut, leaving their unconscious bodyguards on the other side.